Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about comparing yourself to other developers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Fredrik, is it healthy to compare yourself to other developers? And how do you know if you are a bad developer? And the short answer is, it is healthy in a way to compare yourself to other developers if you have a leveled head and you understand the purpose of comparing yourself to somebody else. Let me explain. So I'm gonna get the dirty thing out of the way first, because it's actually something that I spoke to my friend Stefan about the other day when we were talking we were doing some pair programming together, and he explained to me that I had said something that kind of stuck with him, and that was that I said that there is no prestige between us, because as you can imagine, he perceives himself as being a less experienced developer, and then he looks at me as being a more experienced developer, even though that may not always be 100% true, and that's one of the things that I want to touch on here. But that's the perception. I'm the teacher, he's the student, so of course he's, in many cases, he's going to feel like, I have something to prove to Fredrik and so forth. And I told him, you have to understand that when I'm in a pair programming session with somebody, and at that exact moment it is my job to lead the programming interactions. It depends on the interaction. Sometimes I'm working with a coworker that is just as experienced as I am, and then we just have a really nice back and forth. Or sometimes I'm in the teaching position, and okay, then it's my job to kind of guide the conversation along, and vice versa. Now, in that environment, there is no prestige. And he said to me that feels kind of weird to me, because when I started out my career, I had this opinion where I could tell that, I know something that this other developer doesn't. And that made me feel a little bit like, I'm better than this person. And that comparison right there, you have no idea how common that comparison is. Everybody does it. I do it as well in many cases. And then I try to I do it less and less, because as you go along, you realize how silly that notion is. And I will explain why. But it is a very human thing to compare yourself to other people in all facets of life. Everybody does it all the time, in some way, even if you don't admit it openly, even if it's just a very fleeting thought where you see somebody who has something that you don't, or that you want, or even for the slightest split second you go, but I have this other thing that makes me better than that person. Or you try to justify the situation by stating that, as an example is in the gym, you see somebody who's really fit and you go, they're probably taking steroids, or they just have good genes, or something like that. You justify the reason, you try to create a situation mentally where you don't have to deal with the fact that, this person is just stronger than me, or faster than me, or better than me in some way. Just get that reptile brain back to a good state. So this is normal. I wouldn't say that this is healthy. I'm just stating that this is a part of life, in my personal opinion. It is something that you can't fight. You will always at some point in your life feel like you are better or worse than somebody else. And embracing and accepting that limitation and just being okay with that is a very human thing. The thing that is more interesting is, what do you do with that information? Do you let this control your behavior, or do you learn from it? That's the thing that I want to focus on, because I think that is the most important thing. That it's the thing that is going to dictate whether or not you become a jealous bastard of a person, or if you become a lifelong learner and a good friend. And even more importantly, a good student, I would say. What I mean by that is just that when you see someone who's better than you, if your initial thought is, damn, they're so good at this thing, and you kind of feel a little bit self-conscious or jealous or something like that, that's okay. Feel that way. And as soon as that primal thing within you that you can't really control all that well, with a lot of meditation and training and stuff like that, you might be, or if you just live a very holistic and fulfilled life, you might control that. But at some point, your the primal parts of your brain is going to let go of you, so you get control back and you can consciously think about the problem. And then the second thing should happen, hopefully, and that second thing should be, if you really have gotten this down, how can I learn from this person? How can I befriend this person so that they will teach me to get better at this thing? Or maybe you don't even care. Maybe it's just a fleeting thing. Maybe it's not that important to you. I've seen so many people, especially in fitness, where they see something that inspires them for the moment, like a movie or something like that. If you remember the old movie 300, well, it's not really old, but the 300 movie, there was a period of a few months there where every living human being, well, at least every single man on the planet, wanted to learn the 300 workout. And and that was the most important thing. It just completely took over. Everybody was crazy about it. And some people will start on Monday and try and be really enthusiastic about it, but they will quit immediately because they realize that having that level of fitness that they have in the movie is just not sane to sustain that for an average person over a long period of time. And it wasn't worth the investment for a lot of people. So of course it's going to die down like every single fad and every single trend. And the same thing goes for you. If there's someone who really is good at something that you really care about, I think that the comparison is natural, but you should always strive towards this goal of saying that, well, it's not so important what this person is doing. I mean, they're doing well and they're doing their thing, and I mean, if they got all this talent from inheritability, talent, or if it's just because most likely they worked really hard at it, well, maybe they have some lessons that they can teach me. And humbling yourself in that fashion actually makes you a much stronger person, because you're more likely to get better at the thing that you are open to. If you're open to learning from somebody else who already knows those things. It's something that you should always do this if it is all possible, because before you know it, you will actually adopt a lot of the learnings with this approach that this person may be able to bestow upon you, and then from there you will actually get better at the thing, and the difference between the two of you will start to level out. Now, there are certainly differences at a genetic level in some cases where you can't really bridge those things, but I've always stated, and I think that this is something that you should follow as well. Focus on dealing with the things that you can do something about, and ignore the stuff that you have no control over, because you're just going to make yourself miserable if you try to go over in your mind all the things that you don't have or you can't do or so forth, that you have no way of affecting. It's a very unhealthy mindset. It's a much more healthy thing for you if you focus on doing things about the stuff that you can do things about. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's practically impossible for you, and there's no objective way to state that you are better than somebody else unless you're dealing with a very specific area. It's very similar to asking the question, who is the best athlete in the world? Well, it's impossible to say unless we specify the sport. And even in that scenario, depending on how you want to measure it, it might actually be hard to state that one person is better than another, because you're going to have to go by, if it's a team sport as an example, what are you going to go about? Which is the best player? Well, it's practically impossible to say who the best player is in a team, because then you're going to have to state that, oh, one position is more important than another. If you're dealing with someone who is a runner, it might be simpler, because if you win more races than anybody else, well, then you're the fastest person there. Congratulations. But for more sophisticated problems, such as software development, where there are many areas, it's almost impossible for you to know which thing, like if you're better or worse, just in a general fashion. Because although, as an example, I might be a lot better than my coworker at a specific framework or a specific tool, well, they might be much better at other things that I'm not all that good at. And the best and healthiest way for you to deal with these insights, where you find that, oh, this person is better than me in this area or that area, is to identify that, wow, okay, they're really good. And then feel, if you do emotionally need to feel a little bit jealous or bad about it, let that happen, because it's a very natural thing. And then as soon as you get control back from your reptile part, the ego, go into the mindset, okay, how can I act on this information? How can I create a connection to this person? Or maybe just ask them, can you maybe share a few tips with me about your process so that I can get better? And before you know it, you are comparing yourself less and less, or at the very least, you are finding that you're on pretty much the same level as most people are in these different areas that you're comparing yourself in. Have a great day.